Long before I knew what the McMillan lecture was, or for that matter, what physical therapy PT really was, I met a future McMillan lecturer. I had applied to 5 of the 6 PT programs in the country and been rejected by 3 and waitlisted by 2. While I was visiting Stanford, my undergraduate alma mater, I asked if they might give me some feedback on why they rejected me. That is when I met Gail Jensen, who couldn't have been nicer and gently let me know that the essays I had submitted on non-standard paper with lots of typos were, well, not quite up to their standards. You see, at the time I applied, I was living abroad and working on a communal farm, and it was hard to find 8x11 paper that was white and a typewriter that was in English. Dr. Jensen was, of course, right. My applications were really awful. Who could know that years later, I would become a voracious reader of her work on expert novice clinicians and clinical reasoning, listen to her give this very lecture, and invite her to be on my PhD students committee and co-publish several papers with her. But there was a lot I did not know then. Thankfully, the University of Southern California accepted me off of the waiting list 4 days before the program started. So I grabbed my bike and my backpack and I got on a plane and I flew to LA, where a second-year student was kind enough to meet me and put me up for the night. The next morning, I went to orientation hoping to find some roommates. I did. And my first year in PT school, I lived in a utility room. Someone loaned me a couch. I bought a desk at a junkyard that took up 3/4 of my room. There were 3 doors, one to the kitchen, which you see here, one to the garden with lemon trees, and one to the garage. But I digress. Dr. Helen Hislop was my advisor. I was on probation to make sure I could handle the program. Dr. Hislop had already given her famous, not so impossible dream, McMillan lecture. I had no idea about it. All I knew was that she was a stern and generous advisor and an extraordinary teacher. She taught us about frameworks and movement observation. And after I graduated, yes, I did graduate, we would catch up at PT meetings. I think she would be tickled to know that I stand before you here today. I am here thanks to being mentored and supported by dear colleagues and friends. I sincerely thank the distinguished team that nominated me and counseled me on so many things that have informed my PT career so far. Together, we have co-published frameworks, books, launched a journal, co-led national and international initiatives. Many of them you see pictured here when they gave this lecture or other named lectures at APTA, as well as the Chartered Society of Physiotherapy in the UK. I am here as well, thanks to being part of strong, healthy communities, like USC that educated me, where I had my first opportunity to do research in a global context, Kessler, where I grew up as a clinician, NYU, where I became a researcher and had a second experience with capacity building for rehabilitation in Honduras, and UMDMJ Rutgers, where my colleagues have supported me and my long and winding choices in academia. It continues to be my home, where we have the great joy of preparing originally bachelor's, then master's, and now DPT students, as well as wonderful PhD students. In my professional life outside of New Jersey, I have found family in the Academy of NeuroPT and the editorial board of JMPT, and more recently, the Academy of Leadership and Innovation, and the International Organization of Neurophysiotherapy, which is a specialty group where colleagues continue to teach and support me. I'm fortunate as well to be part of my own family, my husband Joel, the real PT in the family, and our children Sarah and Daniel. You are my humans, and I'm so happy you are all here with me today. Before I get on with it, I need to share a little bit about me, my position statement, if you will, as it informs my point of view and choice of topic for today, which is not in my area of scholarship, but rather my lived experience. I was born and raised in Mexico City in a multicultural and trilingual home. My parents were refugees from Nazi Europe, with my mother being raised in New York City and my father in Mexico City. I was privileged to have a bilingual education that prepared me for study in the US and Mexico. And if you know me, and you know how much I love Mexican candy, that picture was taken in San Diego CSM when I got a tip for a really good place to find Mexican candy. I was raised to look at the world and consider my role in it. This has served me well in my career as a physical therapist, clinician, educator, and scientist. The richness of my experience is gained from collaborations with colleagues and students all over the globe, or the 25 member countries of the International Neurologic Physiotherapy Association, for which I serve as president. During my recent sabbatical at the Pan American Health Organization, I observed and learned about processes and tools to enhance rehabilitation. I strongly believe there's a mutual benefit of collaboration when we learn from others, particularly those with different points of view. That is a strategy that we can use to advance and spread knowledge in our field, as well as gain insight into our own systems and practice. Simply put, when we collaborate on a global level, it takes us beyond what we can do and achieve on our own. There are many benefits to global engagement, broadly, for healthcare in particular, and as well as for physical therapy. I've listed them here, but you can find more details if you read the lecture. For both personal and evidence-based reasons, I want to talk today about the imperative of looking outward to move ahead. Outward from the silos within the profession, outward from the profession, outward from the United States, and even further, outward to consider our planet. We are citizens of the global community, and in particular the Americas, because we reside in the region and are members of international organizations, such as the Pan American Health Organization and the North American and Caribbean region of World Physiotherapy. And we have the privilege and imperative to commit, communicate, collaborate, and contribute. So in my talk, Arriba y Adelante, looking outward and moving ahead, I will share with you my perspective of our association's history of global engagement and propose specific ways that we can contribute to enhancing rehabilitation, both at home and in our region, the Americas. We have contributed to global physiotherapy community in a variety of ways through our participation in large organizations such as World Physiotherapy and partnering with other nonprofit organizations. In preparing this lecture, I learned so much about the history of our profession. Mary McMillan herself, while born in the US, moved to Edinburgh and then Liverpool when she was only 5 years old. And as we all know, she returned to the United States and began treating children with polio and was the first Reconstructionist aide. What I think is important to note in the context of this lecture is that she was trained abroad and brought it back to the US. Mildred Elson, the first McMillan lecturer and APTA's first CEO, led the charge as our APTA was one of the founding organizations of the World Confederation of Physical Therapy, the international organization that represents physical therapists. You can experience her sage words at the opening of the first WPT Congress held in London in 1953.
September of 1953, the year that London rejoiced in the coronation of Queen Elizabeth II. 1,700 physiotherapists, doctors, and members of allied professions have come from 25 countries to London for a first international congress of the World Confederation for Physical Therapy. Headquarters opposite Westminster Abbey, where Her Majesty was crowned, are the great Central Hall. Here we meet the President of the World Confederation, Miss Mildred Elson, from the United States of America.
In physical therapy, there are no barriers of language or communication. We have a common bond, a common interest, the physical therapy for the patient.
Her words, in my opinion, speak strongly to who we are. In the early McMillan lectures, there was attention to our role in the international arena. Some of these engagements brought to us by physical therapists serving in the military. Here I share some quotes from these early lectures that reflect not only an outward-looking perspective, but also action to support the global physiotherapy community. Ruby Decker, in her lecture, A Hard Look, saw us as a player in the international arena. Emma Vogel, the fourth McMillan lecturer, referring to treatment overseas, illustrates how engaged we were with the global community. Finally, Helen Kaiser, the fifth McMillan lecturer, emphasized the importance of working across different disciplines, described her global engagement as someone contributing to the development of physical therapy in Greece. As I mentioned, we were there at the start of WCPT, and this timeline shows that we engaged with the global physio community and co-hosted the second WCPT conference in New York City in 1956. Pictured here are Mildred Elson, Lucy Blair, and Jonas Salk, the Jonas Salk. I think I might have pronounced it correctly. My husband must have corrected me 5 times when I was trying to get it right. The next conference we hosted was in DC in 1995. It was my first WPT meeting, and coincidentally was also my daughter Sarah's first international meeting. Historically, early in our profession, we were outward-looking and engaged with the global community, and our early McMillan lecturers chronicled that work. So what are we contributing today? Because I did not know, I asked senior leadership at APTA to share with me what we are doing in the arena of global engagement. I also looked at our APTA website. I was delighted to learn that we have both informal working relationships and formal partnerships. I will share some of those with you, but the rest you can read in the lecture. We have close but informal working relationships with several countries. We have granted access to our members-only resources to assist the Portuguese in further developing their programs. We have included our international colleagues at special events and now have one as a public member of our APTA board. I'm really pleased to see that we are working with colleagues from Australia and the UK, because as developed countries, they have already engaged in capacity building to support the advancement of the PT profession in lower and middle income countries. And I believe we can take the lead from them. APTA's global partnerships with has partnerships with professional organizations, some of which are interdisciplinary. Most of our contributions are of financial support. Some, like our partnership with Special Olympics International, is long-standing and highly substantial. Others are an opportunity to contribute financially, like with Health Volunteers Overseas and Pedro, or as I like to call it, Pedro. And yet others give us a chance to represent physical therapy in the scientific community, such as the International Association for the Study of Pain. We are also represented in specific physical therapy organizations, such as World Physiotherapy, and have hosted and offered pro bono services to the North American and Caribbean region of WPT, led WPT, attended many meetings, and in 2019 hosted a great breakfast for those of us who were in Geneva. and most recently have joined the International Organization of Physical Therapy and Mental Health. We had a short, but unfortunately currently not active, relationship with the Pan American Health Organization. PAHO is comprised of all the countries in the Americas, North, South, and Central America. Its formation preceded the World Health Organization, with the goal of controlling epidemics in the region. Today, it functions as the organization that represents the Americas in WHO. In this relationship, APTA staff collaborated on a specific project, producing a powerful resource for the Americas, the Enlace or Enlace, visualization of rehabilitation needs, rehabilitation workforce, assistive technology, as well as specific country profiles. Here we see, for example, the rehabilitation need for low back pain, with red indicating the highest level of need. To the right, you see the need for rehabilitation in stroke. Notice that the need is high in both the US, but not similar in Canada. There is a lot of variability for rehabilitation need across the Americas. In the rehabilitation workforce, there's a graphic of rehabilitation professionals expressed as a density of rehabilitation professionals per 10,000 people. And on the right, the graphic includes only physical therapists. It's a little tough for y'all to see, but the US is 8th. But what I want you to notice is that the amount of physical therapists is highly variable across the region, speaking about the opportunity for capacity building and developing physical therapists in the Americas. There are also individual country profiles for each country, and the rehabilitation needs of that country are summarized at the top. For Mexico, the top 3 are low back pain, musculoskeletal conditions, and osteoarthritis. In my opinion, Enlace should be required reading for PT students going on service trips. It would help them understand the context and needs of the country in which they're going to serve. We contributed to this valuable resource, yet, I must tell you, we can find a link to it nowhere on our APTA website. The best example of what we are doing now that gives me hope and resonates with what I propose we could do better is the process followed by the APTA Telerehabilitation Clinical Practice Guideline Development Group. It was co-led by an American and an Australian who had complementary expertise. And it was supported by members from a variety of the academies who provided content expertise and diverse perspectives from clinicians to researchers and CIOs. Even better, there was outreach to content experts, and the team included physios from Argentina, Great Britain, and Canada. Oh, their flags got messed up. As well as members of the medical, regulatory, and patient communities. The CPG will be translated into French, Portuguese, Spanish, and even Chinese, extending the effort beyond our APTA members to share with our global colleagues. This model should be replicated when appropriate with other CPGs. It's a great example of looking outward to work across disciplines as well as across countries. And I will add that APTA sponsored it and staffed it, so it was a great team effort. My sense is that in the very early days, we demonstrated a strong connection to the global community and engaged with it fully. We continue to contribute, but I really have a lot of questions. Are we contributing enough? Are we well organized and strategic in our global engagement? Are we really living our values of social responsibility? Do we look outward enough? I believe we can do more, and it may be time to look beyond our member benefits. So why is global engagement so important now? It is critical because the World Health Organization has adopted the first resolution on strengthening rehabilitation in health systems. For the first time in the 75 year of the WHO, rehabilitation is acknowledged as a critical part of health. So we need to act now as the world community embraces rehabilitation. We need to do it to better meet our social responsibilities to the global community while at the same time enhancing our practice. I propose 3 strategies to better engage with our organization, outside our organization, and with the global community to enhance our contributions as a professional society. First, let us commit and communicate that a global engagement strategy is a priority for APTA, and I'd like to propose that we create an ambassador. Second, let us connect and collaborate to strengthen the relationship between the academies and the APTA so that we may work across silos within the profession and outside the profession and outside of the United States to take care of our planet. And third, let us collaborate and contribute to the World Health Organization's Rehab 2030 by aligning with the Pan American Health Organization and supporting our colleagues in the Americas, as well as participating in World Physiotherapy relevant activities with the WHO. Committing and communicating, having global engagement as a strategic priority in the next strategic plan, I think would be a very good first step. In addition to that, we need to create an ambassador position. The ambassador would be a position, a new vertical in the organization that would also work horizontally across all the components, having the job of connecting us. What would be in the ambassador's portfolio? Well, low-hanging fruit would be to consolidate all of the material that we have on our website. Partnerships are part of our global engagement, since we are a funder. Why not have a link to Pedro on our evidence-based resources? Right now, the only way you can find Pedro on the APTA website is in a very well-written article on how to find evidence. But it's very buried. It's not very obvious. Do you know that parts of the APTA website are written in Spanish? How would anyone know where to find them? Why don't we have a link to Enlace? The ambassador would work in a lot of areas. It's a busy position. Outreach would be to our colleagues in the Americas, to invite them to come to our CSN meetings and collaborate with us and learn together. Education could be done in collaboration with the Academy of Education to review and update our current practices for student service learning experiences, to make them sustainable and socially responsible. We really need to revamp the way our schools send students abroad. Our students should understand the healthcare context and needs of the country they are visiting, as well as provide services or build capacity, rather than have a one-week drop-in that is not necessarily mutually beneficial. I'll speak more about this later. The ambassador would also be exploring ways to fund international research in the region, similar to the way the EU funds multiple countries, or collaborations with colleagues in other parts of the world who have complementary expertise to us. We could really scale physical therapy research by partnering with excellent researchers and building capacity for research. Top on the research agenda may be the implementation of the Rehab 2030 packets, which I'll speak about in a little bit. The ambassador really would serve as a consistent representative to all the organizations that we are already engaged with and identify new ones that we might want to partner with. And finally, I can see them having a role in facilitating the development and interdisciplinary nature of the clinical practice guidelines. The ambassador would also implement the next 2 things that I'm proposing. So let's go on. Second, I'm proposing that we connect and collaborate to strengthen the synergies between APTA and the academies. Cotter's model of an agile organization, specifically moving away from a hierarchy and promoting a network, can guide us in maximizing the relationships between the academies and APTA, or as I like to affectionately call it, the mothership. As you can see on the left, the distance between the mothership and the academies is too great in terms of hierarchy and processes. On the right, we have a better connection. Let the ambassador be a conduit to expedite idea implementation. The Agile Academies promote innovation, while the mothership can amplify and support these efforts across internal APTA components and relevant external societies, as well as the global community. One of the best examples of the agility of the academies is the structure of the Academy of Innovation and Leadership. The ALI has as its vision to inspire physical therapy professional transformation beyond clinical excellence to improve the human experience. It's composed of special interest groups, but in addition, it has catalyst groups that are smaller entities that germinate and grow new ideas. I just love that concept. The newly formed Environmental Physical Therapy Catalyst Group, EnvironPT, has some compelling reasons for why they exist that further underscore the importance of looking outward and connecting and collaborating. They have taken guidance from the World Health Organization and many other healthcare organizations that have identified climate change as the largest threat to human health. And they are working to find and promote innovations and collaborations supporting the integration of an environmental lens in PT clinical practice, administration, research, and education. In a very short time, they have networked with national and international organizations, held town halls, and delivered courses presented at an International Environmental Physiotherapy Association event. And they facilitated adaptations of materials for the US context, one on why physical therapy is good for the environment, and the other on how to make your physical therapy clinic environmentally sustainable. The QR codes inside these images provide additional information, and you may be interested in learning more about the Environmental Physiotherapy Association. Attending their Catalyst town halls, I learned that individual action is important but insufficient alone when it comes to the environment. And that many professional societies, including occupational therapy, nursing, and medical colleagues, have environmental policies and are working to promote healthcare delivery resilience. APTA does have a position statement to support of environmentally responsible practice, 3 lines, which is a good start, but we should perhaps be creating an association-wide task force like our OT colleagues have done to identify and promote environmental informed best practices, offering health and economic co-benefits for patients, providers, and society. This process could be facilitated by the ambassador. Catalyst groups and other agile groups within APTA's components have the potential to help bring APTA's positions and policies to life. APTA can better tap into that potential with additional vehicles supporting within and across component connections, as shown on the left. I especially like how the environmental PT looked to other professions and went internationally to address such a global and important issue. In the environmental arena, as in many other areas, no one group can accomplish what needs to be done alone. Connection matters, and collaboration is key. Finally, I propose that we need to collaborate and contribute to the World Health Organization's 2030 rehab agenda by building on our previous relationship with the Pan American Health Organization and supporting our colleagues in the Americas. APTA could create a new memorandum of understanding with PAHO, and that relationship could be used as a vehicle for the association to implement a strategic priority to engage with the global community at this critical time in rehabilitation. It's critical because, as I mentioned before, The World Health Organization adopted the first resolution on rehabilitation. But in addition to that, it has also declared 2030 as a decade of rehabilitation. There are 10 strategic priorities for that decade, ranging from creating strong leadership and political support for rehabilitation at subnational, national, and global levels, to strengthening networks and partnerships in rehabilitation between high and low-income countries. In anticipation of the decade, there have been multiple instruments developed and field-tested to support the assessment and development of rehabilitation in low and middle-income countries. I understand from the technical lead at WHO, who is also a physio, that even high-income countries are using these tools to assess their rehabilitation infrastructure. WHO has developed tools like the STARS, Systematic Assessment of Rehabilitation Situation, which you can see here on the figure in the blue. And they evaluate the status of rehabilitation from the government infrastructure all the way to the patient. Findings are then used to develop capacity building and implementation plans that are known as GRASP, FRAME, and ACTOR. I believe these tools could also provide structure in developing a framework for sustainable and mutually beneficial engagement when we send our students to do service work. I did say that 3 times already. In addition, the WHO has developed packages of interventions for rehabilitation. These are guides for countries planning and implementing rehabilitation. The packages identify the essential rehabilitation services for 20 health conditions, such as low back pain, stroke, and cancer. Once these 20 health conditions were identified and selected, there were technical working groups that critically appraised the existing literature to select the evidence base on which to build the rehabilitation packets. Nicole Stout co-led the working group for the cancer rehabilitation packet. The technical team produced an extraordinary paper that synthesizes the findings of 69 clinical practice guidelines. This article alone would be excellent reading in a DPT program, and the rehabilitation packet from this group could form the basis for essential instruction of both DPT students and early clinicians alike. As part of the International Neurophysio Specialty Group of World Physio advocacy work, in response to WHO's request to World Physiotherapy, Sue Whitney, Elizabeth Cassidy, and I, as leaders of IMPA, oversaw the nomination process of qualified individuals who contributed to either packet development, and packet development was charged with identifying what were only the most essential things that were needed to provide rehabilitation. And this was done for persons with Parkinson's disease and traumatic brain injury. We also supported participation in the external review process for the stroke packets. You may access all of these packets here. And as an aside, I really think this would make a great article for PT Magazine. It would be important to interview the APTA members who have contributed to this development, because the truth is that in the global arena, specifically with Rehab 2030, there's excellent work being done by a few of our members that most of our members know nothing about. This work is a beautiful example of interdisciplinary and international collaboration that yielded valuable resources for the global community. And many, many physical therapists participated in this process. I'm highlighting the ones that participated in the development of the Parkinson's packet here. This was a collaborative process by experts from around the globe to contribute guidance on what are the essential tools and services for rehabilitation. The challenge now is to use the tools to assess and implement the packets. PAHO has initiated or completed 8 assessments in countries in the Americas. Some of these were completed by PAHO consultants, but others, like the one in the Bahamas, was completed by an interdisciplinary team from Emory, who has an MOU with PAHO. During my volunteer time at PAHO, I was an observer of the STARS process in the Bahamas. It was led by the local health authorities and supported by the interdisciplinary visiting team. The process was neither ableist nor colonialist. It was cooperative. We, as an organization, could have a tremendous impact in the rehabilitation capacity in the region. An MOU would be a conduit for capable APTA members to engage with PAHO in conducting STARS assessments and implementing plans to advance rehabilitation in the region. We could also do the research around implementation. We could contribute as well to capacity building efforts through education and even modeling how one might structure a professional society. These efforts should not be unilateral but collaborative. We could partner with OT and speech therapy societies as the rehab packets for most conditions require expertise across the teams. So to summarize, I believe that we have the opportunity to become good citizens of the global community. I know we live in a complicated world, and I have painted an optimistic picture. And we often ask ourselves if we can contribute meaningfully to make a change.
What difference can a drop in the ocean make? Everything.
I strongly believe we are well positioned to build on the history of our early founders and on our previous engagements with the global community. Now, we just have to look outward and look forward by committing, connecting, collaborating, and contributing. Arriba y adelante. Thank you.